representation. Ellen, could you?
No?
No?
What would you like me to? I'm not, I mean, Tom, I think, is the person who's been dealing with this, so.
Tom, do you want to do a preface here?
Item 5, is that what we're on?
Yes.
The open meeting law?
That's correct.
Yes.
Yeah. Well, as you all know, we can't go into executive session because we don't have an attorney yet. But I think you all got a list of 3 attorneys with their little bios. I think we need to select one of those people today.
When do you have to respond, Tom?
I called the AG's office and got an extension to September 30th. We can probably get an extension beyond that, but that's our goal right now.
And do we have the authority to pick an attorney, and who pays the attorney?
The attorney fees are paid. We cannot pay as an attorney. We don't have any budget.
Right.
But the county is going to pay for the attorney to give the commission advice.
But whatever the advice is, if we need legal representation moving forward after that advice, it will be up to the members of the commission to pay for it, correct?
If we need individual representation, yes. You pay for it yourself.
So we are currently, the complaint is against us as a body, not as individuals?
That's my understanding, yes.
So the county would pay for the attorney representing the commission as a whole, not any individual members.
That's my understanding. That in order, they will at least pay for the response that we are required to submit to the Attorney General's office.
Now, when we had our open meeting law training, I thought we were told that we would be responsible as individuals to pay for it.
If the Attorney General's investigation comes to the conclusion that specific individuals are guilty of some open meeting violation more so than other members, they can go after individuals. That's my understanding. And then under those conditions, you would have to have your own representation. But that's not until after the Attorney General's investigation is complete.
I'm curious, Tom, have you had any explanation why we received a briefing on the open meeting law when there was supposedly a complaint filed against this commission back in May, but our June briefing had there was no mention made whatsoever about a violation?
I learned about the complaint the night before that meeting. And I didn't bring it up at that meeting because I wanted to talk to some people about it. I wanted to talk to the AG and I wanted to talk to Sharon Bronson about it. So I did not bring it up at that meeting. I brought it up very soon after that meeting.
So what do you recommend as our next step?
I think our next step is to make sure that we have an attorney who we can meet with in executive session, and the attorney will, my assumption is the attorney will be responsible for drafting the response to the complaint.
Tom, I thought you had a deadline for that response of July 20th.
Originally, the Attorney General gave us 30 days. I have had communication with Deborah Sterling, who's the one who's doing the investigation. She has agreed to an extension to September 30th.
Has she put that in writing?
Yes, I have an email to that effect.
So at this point, you think we should make a choice of an attorney? And do you have any preference over the 3 that we were given?
I think they're all qualified. I have some association with Thomas Benavides through my wife, but I haven't met him before, but I know of his work. And my wife also knows something about Donna Aversa, but I know nothing about the other fellow.
Tom, you mentioned that originally
Benavides was appointed, but then there was controversy over that. Can you explain that a little bit?
Yes. My goal was to have an attorney at this meeting, and so we could have an executive session to get this whole process rolling. So I went ahead with the county attorney's office, and this Benavides had a very good reputation in this area, and so I stuck my neck out and said that he would be acceptable to the commission. Well, in the meantime, I'm sure you all know that there was a lot of controversy raised about it because he's an attorney at the RTA. My opinion is that doesn't really matter because he wasn't involved in the election, in the RTA election. He's just an attorney for the organization. So anyway, he called me and that because of this controversy, he thought that a better process would be to have the county attorney provide a list that the commission could choose from so that there wouldn't be any misunderstandings about people's qualifications and their associations. So that came from Benavides himself, was that process. And I talked to the county attorney's office, and they thought that was probably a reasonable way to go under the circumstances. So the county attorney's office has provided the 3 names, and that's where we stand.
I don't mean to cover old ground here, but I'm a little confused, again, going back to our June meeting, that briefing we received from the county attorney. I seem to recall him specifically saying he never saw a need for the Pima County Election Integrity Commission to ever meet in executive session. Yet a month later, here we are discussing going into executive session. On its face, I'm confused because the briefing on open meeting law that from my first day on this commission I told would be forthcoming in a very short order took as long as it did to occur, number one. And number two, the briefing that we are finally given as a commission indicated we basically shouldn't need to sit in executive session, yet 1 month later here we are sitting discussing hiring or finding an attorney to give us legal advice in an executive session. I'm a bit concerned that we're getting conflicting messages from folks that are supposed to be offering us legal advice about what we should and shouldn't be doing as a commission.
Anybody have a comment on that?
Well,
Observation. We had a previous briefing on the open meeting law, I think 2 years ago or so, maybe. And so, I think in that context, what's just been said is different because we've been through it for a long time, as you said. We're going to have a briefing on the open meeting law. And I don't think I think it was a matter of chance that things turned out the way they did, unless, Tom, you know something else about what might have transpired.
There has not been a briefing on the open meeting law since I've been on the commission, except for the one we had in June. I have never been briefed.
Yeah, we had one, and I'm thinking, Benny, you were there, Tom was there.
yeah, we met downtown in the upper floors of the America Trust Building or whatever
I
that
think
is.
so, yeah.
That was before my time.
And one of my concerns is that for the last year and a half, I keep hearing at meetings where various members of the commission inform us that we will have a briefing at our next meeting, only to be told the county attorney can't meet with us at that time to give us a briefing, therefore it would go to the next month. And that has been the constant refrain coming from the county attorney's office, as I understand things.
Well, one of the problems we had is that for one of the meetings we had it scheduled, but we didn't put it specifically on the agenda, and so we couldn't. As it turned out, we couldn't do it that day because it has to be on the agenda. So that delayed us 1 month, and then we got delayed another month because it couldn't be there. So that's why it ended up being at the last meeting.
I think we're getting a little off the topic, so
Yeah.
we need to pick one of these 3 attorneys. Does anybody here know anything about any of these attorneys?
I move that we select Mr. Benavides to be the counsel for the commission.
Second.
Could you repeat that? I couldn't hear that.
I move that we select Mr. Benavides to be counsel for the commission.
Second.
And could you give us reasons?
I think he's well qualified.
Is anybody?
Unfortunately, I would be voting against it because regardless of whether or not it is true, there is the appearance, because of his connection with the RTA, and the lawsuit against, basically because of the RTA election, there is the appearance, even if it's not reality, there is the appearance of impropriety.
Do we
I
have-
concur.
Does anyone have any recommendation? We have the motion on the table,
Yeah.
but during discussion, can we ask if anyone else has another recommendation? Know anything about
I
it?
have a different idea about how we should proceed. Do we need to vote on Benny's motion before
Yeah,
discussing my idea?
yes, we do. Pat?
I would say if he has a different idea, we should include it in the discussion.
Well, it's a completely different procedure.
Yeah, we're voting on a motion to pick a particular person.
Can we table the proposal?
Can you withdraw your motion for what?
No.
No, okay. The motion is on the table, and it has been seconded. And if there's any other discussion, we can vote on this motion, and then we can vote the motion down, and then look at
Okay.
your
My
suggestion.
concern about Mr. Benavides, as it would be for the other two, is that if we're asking a lawyer to give us legal advice, I think that lawyer should be interviewed by somebody to determine whether he has listened to the tape of that meeting and whether he believes a violation did in fact take place. Because if he thinks a violation took place, he wouldn't be my choice to represent us. If he thinks a violation did not take place, that's the guy that I would want to represent us. And I don't know what the case is for Mr. Benavides
Would
or
you
either of the other two.
Would you delegate this interview to, say, Tom and one or two other people rather than the whole committee?
Yeah.
So this is an alternate, but it's not part of this motion.
I just feel like we don't know where Mr. Benavides stands on this particular issue, and so I think it's premature to select him.
Then, if you agree with Nikki, then you should vote no on the motion, and we'll take that as a separate item. Is that
Just to make a comment here, we're looking at getting the services of an attorney who is to take our position. And he will if he's a good attorney, he does the best job he can promoting our interests.
Regardless of his or her beliefs.
Right.
Shall we proceed to a vote on this motion, and if it is voted down, we can then vote the next concept? Has everybody agreed on doing that?
Sure.
Okay, everybody in favor of Benny's motion?
Aye.
Aye.
Do some hands. 1, 2, 3, 4.
And Tom?
That's a
Count it,
four.
Tom. Yeah. And nay?
Nay.
Nay.
1, 2, 3, 4. Arnie?
Nay.
What?
Nay.
Nay. Okay, the motion fails. Do you want to make a new motion?
I'll make a new motion that we deputize someone to interview these three candidates and find out where they stand on that particular meeting.
We have a second?
Second.
I have a question. Nikki,
Yes?
I sympathize with the motion. My only question is, does it say something about the lawyer if they have an opinion that they didn't express in his aptitude before they'd actually done the investigation? I mean, if somebody were interviewing a candidate, they might ask, do you think there's been a violation? But I think we can learn most from the reasons they had for that and what they would do contingent on that initial belief. Does that make any sense to you? Because
Yes, I just think all three of them should be interviewed to find out what they think about that particular meeting before we decide on having somebody to represent us.
No, and I think we can't expect them to give us a really informed opinion without doing the investigation. So I think we should bear that in mind in thinking about a recommendation of, choosing one.
If I may, two things. One, Tom, according to what you're saying, we've got until September to respond to this, and even then we might have more time if things work out that way. Number two, taking into consideration what you just said, Arnie, but I like Mickey's idea of at least an initial read from who these three individuals are and their opinions on things. At my study of open meeting law that I've had to do in the last week or two here, it raises some personal concerns, and I want to make sure that my vote on this commission to hire someone essentially to represent my interests sitting on this commission, even if it's just a written response to an AG's question, and then we don't deal with that person in the future. I would like to make sure that I'm fairly confident that that individual is really looking out for my best interest, be it as a member of the commission or as an individual, however that wants to be interpreted. So the idea that someone, and I'm assuming it would be Tom here for purposes of this moving forward, get a feel for who this individual is, and have they, at least watched a few minutes of the meeting to see if, in their estimation there was something legitimate going on, is there a point of contention, whatever, and then we move from there at our August meeting.
Could you restate your motion?
My motion is to deputize somebody to interview the three candidates.
These three.
These three candidates, to determine what their reaction to that particular May meeting is with regard to whether a violation took place or not. And then, based on those interviews, for us to choose a person to represent us.
Would you consider a change in it to more generally to look at their qualifications? Or is that the only question you want asked?
We've already got the biography showing their qualifications. I'm satisfied they're all qualified. My question right now is, if you've got three lawyers, let's consider scenarios. One possibility is the three lawyers all agree that there was no violation of the open meetings law, and then we probably choose somebody just based on their qualifications. Second scenario is one person feels there was no violation and two people feel there was a violation. We probably want to choose the person who thinks there was no violation to represent us. Third scenario, they all agree there was a violation, in which case we probably want to just choose the person with the best qualifications. But if one or two of them believe there was a violation and one or two of them believe there was not a violation, I think that should be part of our consideration in deciding who to represent us.
Would you be willing to restate your motion to reflect that? Because your motion is very specific on that one item.
My motion is to have somebody interview the three candidates, to ask them whether they believe there was or was not a violation at that May meeting, and to use that information to help us decide which lawyer to select to represent us.
Okay.
If I could clarify things, you're wanting whoever's deputized to report back, and then we make a decision at our August meeting?
Yes.
Okay.
And we do have the authority to, Ellen?
Pardon?
We have the authority to spend county money on this attorney, we think?
Well, I think Tom talked to the chief civil deputy county attorney, and that was the understanding between them, right, Tom?
That's correct.
Okay. Are there any further discussion of the motion?
Well, there's another possibility, Mickey, that you didn't stay. All three of them say it doesn't make any difference what I believe.
I think that's essentially the same situation. If all three of them give the same answers to the interview,
Or even if one or two of them say, it doesn't make any difference, I'm gonna fight for you to the best of my ability.
I think we need the answers to those questions before we choose somebody. If all three of them say it doesn't make any difference, then that's information that we can use to make our decision.
As much as I don't like lawyers, I really think most lawyers work very hard at preventing their own opinion of the case from affecting how hard they fight for that case.
And they can fight for one side in one case and the other side in the next case.
Yeah. However, I seconded your motion because I think it's good for us to at least get that feel. And now, as of right now, it's the end of September when we've got to respond, so we can wait until the August meeting. But I think everybody should be warned that we may get notified for a special meeting because for some reason things got pushed forward. And just for information for the two of you on the phone, one of our members walked out.
Benny left. We still have a quorum, however.
Benny left right after the previous vote.
Yeah.
Nikki, I just want to say again, and Chris, that it's in my mind not sufficient to know what they think is going on, but why. I mean, it would help me choose if I knew something about the types of reasons that people gave. If it was something that seemed calculated to get us to choose them, or whether it seemed more thoughtful and more nuanced than perhaps the reason that the other candidates gave. Does that make any sense to you?
Yeah, it makes a lot of sense. You know,
Yeah,
the more information we've got, the better the decision we can make.
Yeah, yeah. So if Tom is doing this interview, it'd be good if he kept some notes on those sorts of issues to inform us, later.
Yes.
And I would also like to know what their experience in open meeting law is, if they've ever done it before.
It's listed on a couple of them. It's listed on Benavides and Aversa. I don't remember seeing it here on locks. Yes. All three of them have experience with open meeting law, according to their biographies.
Okay. Are we ready for a vote?
Yep.
Do we have a vote? No, we're waiting for a vote. All in favor of the motion?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes unanimously.
Tom volunteering.
Tom?
Okay, I would like to suggest that someone else do the interviews because I have 1 week here and then I'm going to be traveling for about 3 weeks. And so if we can get the attorneys to read and digest this thing by within a week, then I could conduct the interviews. But I think that's unrealistic.
Do we have a volunteer to do the interview?
Well, I will volunteer,
Okay, Barbara?
but I don't want to do it alone. Some other person.
I'll be glad to go with you.
So Mickey and
If
Barbara?
that's acceptable.
Okay,
That's acceptable.
all right. So that's,
When you'll report, you'll have something for us
We
for,
would report back at the next meeting,
okay.
or before.
Or before?
without violating the quorum law.
Communicate to Sarah, who will
Yeah.
inform
Yeah,
you.
well, we could submit a report to Sarah, and she could email it to you if we have such a report available ahead of the meeting. But otherwise, we would report back
Thank
at
you.
the meeting.
Okay,
Yeah.
all right. Next item, primary election plans.
I'm sorry.
Pardon me?
I have one more question
Oh, okay.
related to the previous
Oh,
item.
I'm sorry, okay.
Mr. Huckelberry's representative to the commission, I believe, is Arnie.
Yes.
Have you had any discussions with him about this complaint?
No, I haven't, and I've been waiting for this meeting to decide if I should and what I might get out of it. Do you have any recommendation?
I am curious about something. Does anyone know if Mr. Huckelberry discovered the information on his own and filed the complaint, or did someone complain to his office and then he turned around and filed a complaint with the AG's office? I'd be very interested to know that.
I don't know anything about that except what I heard. I got a call from John Brakey, and again, take this for what it's worth. John, not the most reliable source.
He's right here.
Sorry, he's there? Okay, he told me that Benny White had filed the complaint. So that's how it got started, and anything after that, I don't know why it was done or exactly how it was done. Is that correct, John? Is that what you told me?
Can I answer?
Yeah, I don't think so, Ken. I don't know. Ellen, can you answer?
I don't know. I'm not in open meeting.
Hang on a
We don't want to
second.
get him in trouble again here.
Okay, anyway, all I'm not going is I'm not misrepresenting, the best of my knowledge, what allegedly happened, but I don't know what happened, and I haven't talked to Chuck.
Okay, any more questions? Any more issues?
Do you have any further information?
I don't know, and that was a meeting I missed. I was out of town, so.
Then
But
it is
I
not
don't know.
covered, there's nothing explicit in 38-431.01 covering whether a member of a commission can ask an audience member a question.
Okay, that's a question for the courts to figure out if we ever
Yeah.
get that right. Okay, ready to move on to primary election?
I might point out there was an article in today's Daily Star
I was just going to mention that.
which explicitly said that Mr. Huckelberry asked the Attorney General to conduct the investigation.
But it didn't
As a
say
form of intimidation.
Well, we have a copy of Huckleberry's memo.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, we know that, but we don't know whether somebody approached Huckleberry.
we just don't know why Huckleberry wrote the memo in the first place.
And the Daily Star article does say that Mr. Huckleberry is doing this as a form of intimidation.
Well, the Star gets a lot of things wrong.
think that's what it's.
I believe it quotes somebody.
It
as-
quotes-
That, okay, yeah.
It quotes-
I read it on the bus down here, so.
Quotes Mickey, yes.
Okay, let's move on to primary election.
Really don't have much to add.
Not integrate with the current polling place scanners. In effect, you're saying polling place scanners will be removed from the system for the foreseeable future in Pima County. That's wrong.
No, it's, I don't, made my point that I think that's not what we've decided, but whatever.
Well, how about if we try a motion to recommend to the Board of Supervisors that they not go forward with procurement without polling place scanners?
Second,
What if the motion were that we ask the Board of Supervisors to start a new process for polling place scanners?
That's slightly different, but I prefer the way I worded
I
it.
seconded Mickey's motion.
Any discussion?
Tom?
Are you there?
Please restate the motion.
The motion is to make a recommendation to the Board of Supervisors that they not proceed with procuring a new election system unless they add precinct scanners.
One issue is that we are doing an experiment in the primary election, which has to do with the removal of scanners. And that has to be evaluated, seems to me, before we can make a decision on this.
Well, that's why a month ago I recommended that we delay the procurement by 6 months. But my motion didn't carry a month ago. You want me to try that motion again?
We already have a motion on the table. We have to deal with that one. Arnie, are you still there?
Yeah, I'm here.
You have anything to say?
I was going to suggest a possible clarification of the motion to give an option to Board of Supervisors to, if they're not going to include a polling place audit mechanism, that they commit themselves to improving the auditing process at the polling place in some other way. I don't know if that makes sense, but I didn't want to seem to be totally negative, it's this or nothing, but to give them some option for addressing the problem in a reasonable period of time. Does that make any sense to the Bill? You originated the motion.
It makes sense. The problem is we have a bit of we're choosing the lesser of unsatisfactory solutions here simply because we're running out of time. We're running out, the age of the current system is such that we may not have the luxury of thinking about another election, even including the 2014 primary and general elections. The clock has already ticked down for doing anything in terms of providing an outlet for other vendors to come in. We're kind of stuck now. As I see it, it comes down to one of two things. We proceed going forward with the election systems we have and hope and pray that nothing bad happens and they can somehow soldier on for another year or two. We go with the central count system, eliminating polling place locations, which I have serious objection to, and I won't restate them right now. The third option is we proceed with purchasing new equipment with the option to also include polling place scanners. That's what we're down to now.
Well, you got to have accessible devices.
Yeah, whatever we do, we have to have an accessible device.
We already have accessible devices, and we're not getting rid of this, are we?
They are not compatible with
They're not compatible with anything. What difference does it make?
Including the disabled.
I mean, you basically have to take the votes off of them by hand and enter it into the central system, don't you?
Yes. We're getting ahead of ourselves here a little bit, but Barb had the opportunity to see it when the vendor presented it. And the vendor that is under consideration right now has a upgrade to the system that we will be eligible for if we go forward with this purchase. That includes an accessible device. It's called an express vote, and I won't go into the details here, but that would be eligible for purchase/procurement going forward as well. So Barb is right. We do need to have some type of accessible device. That is an option. It is not the only option. As I've mentioned to a degree in previous meetings, is that the Arizona Secretary of State is launching during this primary and general election their overseas voter application, where a person can actually have their ballot sent to them electronically. They voted in some capacity. I'm not an expert on this, and then they send that back to the recorder. Well, if we can do that on the other side of the world, let's try and do the same thing for a disabled person who is either at their homes or who comes to a polling place. And I don't need special equipment for that. All I need is a computer and a printer. So there are some options going forward, but we do need to meet our commitment to have a disabled voting equipment out there.
As much as I do not like removing polling place scanners, unfortunately we're trapped. I think telling the Board of Supervisors or having the Board of Supervisors tell procurement that polling place scanners have to be added into this procurement or procured as soon as possible afterwards is our best way of going, because otherwise the equipment's probably not going to last. That's going to destroy the integrity of the elections. If we don't go with polling place scanners, that reduces the integrity of the elections, not only perceived but actual. So, we've got to bring to the Board of Supervisors that polling place scanners are important, and they don't really cost that much compared to everything else the county spends.
Exactly. If memory serves, Brad, you quoted a figure, I don't remember if it was at the June meeting or the May meeting, that polling place scanners were roughly 1.8 million was the figure I believe you used, even rounding up to 2 million. Given the cost of elections in general, amortizing that out over a natural lifespan of that equipment, I would submit $1.8 or $2 million even, Pima County spending to ensure the integrity of elections is a very, very infinitesimally small price to pay.
But the fact is that with the procurement process we have now, and you should have spoken up earlier when you.
I've been speaking up for months.
The
We did
criteria.
speak up earlier. It's been mentioned at every meeting for the last 6 months. And the procurement went forward without our suggestion. And so my motion is to send a specific message to the Board of Supervisors and officially register our displeasure with the way the procurement is going forward. Now, we're not telling the Board of Supervisors what they can and cannot do. We're just expressing our opinion that going forward with this without polling place scanners is a bad idea.
Yeah, our advice to the Board of Supervisors is include polling place scanners as part of their process for procuring new election equipment. If they have to send a memo to the procurement department to go back and rewrite their contract, it's my understanding that the RFP included the option of polling place scanners. That's a simple rewrite of the contract.
Brad, I think the option to buy polling place scanners continues, doesn't it?
Yeah.
It does.
If you decide after the primary election, after these pilot studies on removal occur, you decide it's a disaster, you can go buy polling place scanners.
That is my understanding.
And that's a separate procurement process.
No,
It's part of the present
It's
procurement
part of the
process.
same procurement process, right?
It's just an option that hasn't been taken up yet,
Yeah, it's an option that hasn't been exercised.
and it's one that should be exercised.
So all we're saying is that we think this option ought to be exercised.
That is the advice this advisory body is giving to the Board of
So
Supervisors.
restate your motion. Whose motion? Was your motion?
No, the motion was to advise the Board of Supervisors that we believe that polling place scanners are an essential part of the integrity of elections, and they should, when they're replacing equipment, they should replace the polling place scanners as well.
That's not how I heard your motion the first time. Maybe I heard it wrong.
So tell me how you heard it the first time.
I thought you said not go ahead with this procurement process, but basically start again.
I said that they should not go forward with the procurement of new equipment without including polling place scanners. And the ensuing discussion tells us that this is an option in the current. So it doesn't require a separate procurement. It's part of the existing procurement. And I'm just saying that polling place scanners should be considered an essential part of the new equipment. And that's our recommendation.
Any further thoughts, Tom or Arnie?
No, my only thought is that I would rather have this vote after we do the pilot study, because then we have something to go on. Right now, I have no good argument one way or the other as to whether or not removing polling place scanners seriously affects the integrity of the election. And I think it's only after we do the experiment that I can answer that question.
My only response to that is a simple matter of any system that you have in place that has developed over time, and in the case of elections, I would submit it has developed over time. You put security procedures in place and they build on one another so that every seam, every crack in the system is dealt with when you find them. If you find new cracks in the system, you change your procedures, whatever, to anticipate what those new cracks are. We have new election hardware and software. It's going to develop its own set of cracks in the system. What I'm saying is we have a long-standing tradition of polling place scanners. They have done a very good job of providing a check in the system. Moving forward without an adequate alternative means of providing that same kind of check in the system is very unwise.
But we are not throwing that option away. We are not throwing that option away. We can do an experiment, see what kind of disaster occurs, and then buy polling place scanners if we need to.
I would submit that whether there's a disaster or not, it's unwise to do so moving forward. It's not that we find a problem today. The reason the laws and the procedures are there are to prevent what we can anticipate logically moving forward into the future. That's what a lot of those laws, a lot of those procedures were put in place in the first place to solve.
Well, if the option is available
Can
there.
you speak up, please?
Elaine, speak louder.
If the option is already there, and we're not gonna get anything before August, regardless, isn't this all moot?
No, it's not moot. The thing of it is, when we get the new election equipment, as it stands right now, procurement is working to eliminate a safety check. And whether or not that safety check is needed on every ballot, every election, is meaningless. The safety check is there to prevent problems. And so the experiment for the primary on removing the scanners from certain precincts, whether or not that causes a disaster or not, the scanners are there to prevent problems and to ensure, or at least help ensure, that the election is honest. And regardless of whether or not there's any problem at any specific precinct or any specific election, the scanners are there to prevent problems. And the fact that they didn't show up at this one election really doesn't count. You know, when I was living back east, you put lightning rods on your house. The fact that the chance of lightning striking your house was extremely small, but you put the lightning rod up anyway. The chance of something happening in an election may be very small, but you've got the scanners there to eliminate the problem before it happens.
I think your argument's considerably different from Bill's. He's talking about people having the option to change their minds, basically.
No, it's directly to what he's suggesting. I'm talking about checks in the system, polling place scanners, all of that conversation about having the extra ability to change your vote. That's almost a side discussion. Okay. The point of scanners in the first place was to provide another check in the system, another means of verifying that at polling place X, in fact, we walked in the door with 102 ballots, we left with 102 ballots. Of those 102, 54 people showed up and actually voted. There's 54 ballots tabulated in that box. That's why the scanners are important.
We have two arguments then.
Well, you still got
Multiple arguments, but they're all back to the same thing. Security of the system, integrity of the system, public trust in the system.
You still got that
Wait,
same
Chad
check.
was first and then Elaine.
Barbara, I've got to go, but I just want to make one other comment about this discussion, and that is that I know that personally Chuck Huckelberry is very concerned about security, and the Board of Supervisors should be as well, since we have spent a lot of time as a county and a lot of money fighting suits over mistakes, whether they were intentional or not, that perhaps could have been avoided. And we certainly restructured the system to do that. So I think anything that talks about prevention is in line with that aim to make the system as secure and reliable as possible. And I think that Board of Supervisors should understand that by not having precinct counting and potential challenges, that they're opening themselves up to deja vu all over again.
Yep.
Okay, Pat and then Elaine.
But I was just going to say, you have the same check because you've got your poll list at the polling place. You've got your ballots being counted in a batch. At central count, the two counts have to agree.
There are multiple checks in the system because in the past it was shown that one check wasn't enough. That's why they put multiple checks in place. Voting is too important. Literally everything we do in this country comes down to what happened on Election Day. If that's screwed up, everything falls apart.
Okay.
Well, it could.
Elaine is next.
Well, is it my understanding that as an option for scanners is still on the table? So I don't think anybody's saying, no, we do not want options, we don't want scanners ever again.
I think procurement is saying that.
Procurement is saying that by default because they're only pursuing a central count system. Because as I understand it, they're trying to save $1.8 million by not spending money on polling place scanners.
What this motion is saying is that we think that eliminating polling place scanners is inherently a bad idea, and we don't need an experiment to find that out. We already know it. Now, you can do this experiment, and I suspect that even if we send a message to the Board of Supervisors, they're still going to do the experiment. They're still not going to get polling place scanners until after the experiment, but I think we should go on record as saying that we think eliminating polling place scanners is inherently a bad idea.
Would you read
That's
this
all.
motion, whatever we're voting on? Yeah, thank you. Look in the wrong direction.
To make a recommendation to the Board of Supervisors to not proceed with procurement of new election system unless it includes precinct scanners.
Is that your motion?
Yes.
I call the question.
Okay.
Yeah, I think that's very succinct, and I think that's well within our responsibility of making that
Call for the
recommendation.
question.
Hmm?
The question has
Sorry.
been called.
Okay. Didn't hear that.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Tom?
No.
Arnie is left?
I'm voting no.
I'm voting no too because I think the option is still open and we need it as a second process and it will be a separate process. But I'm not
It's
voting
actually
against.
the same RFP, so it's not that difficult.
Who is that speaking, Tom or Arnie?
That's Tom.
Arnie's
Is Arnie gone? Okay.
Is Arnie still there?
No.
Okay. So the motion,
Passes.
Passes.
So again, we need a letter to the Board of Supervisors.
and Barbara, will you?
I'll sign it.
Okay.
Okay.
And the next Board of Supervisors meeting, and this is the one where procurement is proposing to,
It depends on the length of the negotiations with the vendor, so I cannot say it's going to be in August, but it's potentially going to be their first meeting in August.
what is the date of that meeting by chance?
5th.
August 5th.
Yeah, there's only one meeting in August.
Okay, primary election plans?
The events calendar I handed out to everybody, so it kind of speaks for itself. It is a live document, so things may change from time to time, but it's basically a list of the events as we believe they will unfold.
Is this on the website?
It-
You're trying to be very careful not to say anything.
First off, I want to thank Brad Nelson for the hospitality he showed me at the count center, responding to questions, and if I asked for pictures of seals, he was very easy to work with. I want to thank you, Brad. Okay. I do want to talk about what happened at the count center. Is that first up, I want to report that the ballots only took 69 minutes to count once we started counting, and but it's the procedures that happened up front that have me very concerned. The first thing is that when everybody came in, the two people who were responsible to go ahead and verify that the seal on the cabinet it's a tamper-proof seal, and if you peel it, it says void. And that was never done. The guy came in, he waited, nobody came over, he removed the seal, and by the way, when he removed the seal, he removed it so good, it didn't say void. And these are supposed to be tamper-proof. So I'd like to see a little more security tightening up on that when it applies, it pulls off. Now, I have copies, and I forwarded them on to several people in the group. The second thing that has me concerned is I was always informed that there was a dual password to be used while entering the system, and especially GEMS. That was not done. Okay, of course, they did enter dual passwords to start the system up. the Windows NT. After the count was done, after the logic and accuracy which was done to confirm the fact that this is the same database. This is not an official logic and accuracy. That was done on the 13th. This one was just to verify that this is the same database. After that was done, he shut down GEMS, and I have this all on film, and I document it with my camera. To see this, you need on a big screen. He shut it down completely and broke the chain of custody. I probably ought to go ahead and see if I can FOIA the film, because he was looking at me. I got my camera on the monitor, and it looks like maybe he was fishing or something. But there was no need to break the chain. And I cannot believe that there was not a dual access in there. And those are really very big concerns that I have, even though, sometimes I wonder with this system that we have here, and there's so many different ways that possibly could be manipulated, is that, the only way we're going to get around this is, thank you, Mickey, for your motion, getting it passed. We have to move to verifiable elections that are 100% transparent. And today, with that motion passing, I think that's very exciting. But the things that I saw, and I will forward it to everybody, the video now, has me very concerned because of the lax attitude. I and the recall committee, Richard, requested that Mickey Donahoe be our observer. Now, this is under the statutes, and my friend over here will go into that, clearly states that the recall committee and the candidates can go ahead on a certain statute. We asked for Mickey. They said, no, we're going to have the party chairs do it. It was a nonpartisan election. The closest person in this room is the independent, and he was our choice, and he was denied access. I think that needs to find out why we could not have the people that we picked, especially the candidates and the others. And I would ask that on the next agenda that you would consider putting this on there and then finding out why there's not a dual password on GEMS and why the tamper-proof seal needs to be reviewed and how people are appointed. Other than that, I thank you for your time.
Anyone else?
Yes, I'm sure you're just as tired as I am.
Did you want to give your names for the secretary's?
My name is John Brakey. I'm sorry for not introducing myself. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks. For the record, I'm Richard Hernandez. The last time I visited with you guys, I was here as an elected person by the community representing Sunnyside. Today, I'm here as an individual, someone who lives in the city and the county, and I'm a voter. I'm going to use the comment made, I'm Joe Q. citizen, okay, today. But I was not in that capacity the last time I visited with you. First of all, I have to tell you, I enjoyed the robust conversation and discussion. Some of it is really amazing. I hope you guys understand how important it is what you do. The most fundamental right we as Americans have is the right to vote. And I'm really glad to see you and both sides. I don't know who's appointed by who, because personally it doesn't make a difference. It's wonderful to see you do that. Unfortunately, there isn't more Joe Q public standing behind me to tell you that you're doing what we want you to do. Protect us, make sure that it's fair. So as I'm listening to you, let me share with you a couple of thoughts. If you haven't looked up the statute, which is 13-431.01H under subtitle 7.9.2, it specifically says that this commission can only go into executive session if and when the majority of this commission votes to go into executive session. That cannot come from Chuck Huckelberry. That cannot come from me or anybody else. You yourselves have to decide to go in executive session. When I see this, it really upsets me, because I'm Joe Q. citizen. I'm the one that you are representing. And it's very important to me that you understand how what you do is so important. In the Sunnyside adventure, as you probably know, my focus was a corrupt administrator, Dr. Manuel Izquierdo. My focus was to represent the children. But today, I'm here to represent you. You've got a bully like we had at Sunnyside. His name is Chuck Huckelberry. If you want to go into executive session, you decide, but not the county administrator. For whatever reason that you choose to, and you can look up the statute specifically, but it says there's 7 reasons that you can go into executive session as I read it, and I'm word for word here. Employment, appointments, promotions, demotions, salaries, discipline. Okay? And so when you look at these things, and before you decide to go in executive session, that's one of the reasons I'm really thrilled that you're looking at these lawyers. Here's what I say as Joe Q. citizen. The same man who complained about you is the same man who's telling you you can only have these 3 attorneys. I want to go on the record, I will be contacting the Attorney General's office to indicate that's a conflict of interest. If you want to pick your own lawyer and you like one of these 3 people, no problem. But being forced to have the same 3 that the same person is accusing you, there's a really big, he's playing jury and judge at the same time. I, as Joe Q. Public, am sharing with you, I'm the voter, I live in this county, I live in this city, that's wrong. So if there is money assigned to you, you should pick who you think, you as a commission, think would be in your best interest, not who the bully, Chuck Huckelberry, thinks is in your best interest. This is why we have in our system that you can have special counsel. This is why in certain instances the county attorney can't represent the county because there's a conflict of interest. So there is clearly a conflict of interest here. And I am here to protect you as a commission to tell you I can see it. I am Joe Q. Public, and I see it. You're being bullied to take the same counsel. Wait, I complained about you, and now I'm going to tell you who you can have as a lawyer? Shameful. Shameful. Let me also visit with you on some more thoughts. And again, I'm Joe Q. citizen. I'm really sad. If you want, I'll bring you 20, 30 people so you can have an audience. I can do that. But I want you to know that I represent those people. That's why I'm here. There are some things that really annoy me, and I want to be very clear, such as, our elected official, whose name is, I'm losing it, who walks out because he doesn't like something being elected.
White.
What's that? Benny White. Okay. Well, unfortunately, the public forum, which is what I'm addressing you at, is at the end. We've all been here I've been here since 8:30, okay? You're just as tired as I am. But if you're actually representing the public, don't you need to at least stay to listen to the public? Now, I don't know him, and I don't really care who appointed him, but unless he's got some real significant issue, okay, you as commissioners of this group need to listen to me or anybody else who comes here, as tired as you are, as tired as I am. That is your role. And I'm really, really disappointed. And I don't know who he's appointed by, and it doesn't make any difference to me. So I think when I look at these things, I have some serious concerns. But for the record to this commission, I will also be writing a written complaint to the Attorney Generals that we have a conflict of interest. We have a political conflict of interest. And the only reason Huckelberry is visiting with you, okay, is because there's something in it for his office or whoever he is representing, okay? But you commissioners, you represent us, the people. Let me end by telling Brad this specifically. Here's how the chain of command goes in elections, okay? Huckelberry is employed by the Board of Supervisors. This Board of Supervisors is employed by me and everybody who votes. That's how the chain of command goes. We are the bosses. You, the Board of Supervisors, are elected by us. You appoint Huckelberry, and he appoints Brad at this position. So don't be mistaken. Don't be bullied. Don't be threatened. Trust me, as you know, the result of the Sunnyside election was 75% of the electorate agreed with me by saying no bullying, no threatening, no intimidation. And that's why I'm here to support you. You do what's right. You get your own lawyer. You have money. Somebody, I heard, again, I don't know who, I don't want to say that, said that there has been money procured. Do not feel like you have to pick the lawyer that you're being assigned. Why? Why would you do that? And you're right. You're absolutely right. When if I'm going to pick a lawyer to represent me, let's just say, for example, it's a DUI lawyer. Okay? If I get a DUI, and this is just an example because I don't have one for the record, okay? If I have a DUI, I want a DUI lawyer. I don't want a homicide attorney representing me at a DUI. When I read these people's qualifications, their expertise, their specialty is not public meeting laws. But they do have some specialty in it. But that's not what they do. So I'm going to close by telling you that last time I was here, I appreciate your visit. You will see some written complaints to me from the Attorney Generals on behalf of the public and you. Stand up, do what's right, remind Chuck that he works for the Board of Supervisors, and I'm reminding the Board of Supervisors they work for me and the electorate. Thank you for allowing us at Sunnyside to prove, without a doubt, right? 75% of the community said enough of nepotism, favoritism, bullying, threats. Those people were professionals, and now you are being part of that. So count on me to champion for you to make sure that I won't allow that to happen. And you know what we tell children? You know what we tell our first graders when somebody's bullying you? Tell somebody in authority. I'm going to come to you. I'm going to use that same concept. I'll be glad to bring for you if you want. I've already spoken to the press. When you feel threatened, here's what you do. You tell somebody in authority. I can tell you this morning you were on 790 radio. It was a robust discussion. I've taken 2 calls today to say, did you know they were talking about you again this morning? I can tell you this will be on radio on Wednesday next week. Okay? I can tell you it was in the newspaper. It was on 3 Sonorans. It was on the Arizona Independent. You're not alone. That's right. You're not alone. There's plenty of us standing here. You just don't see us. Okay? And here's what I told Sunnyside, the old board that we have, thank God, gotten rid of. We, the community, pick our elected officials because, you know what? I have a 90-year-old at home, and she's missing lunch. And every minute, probably the last 45 minutes you've seen me, I've been very antsy because she needs me. This is why we elect people. We elect you because we have a life, and we trust you to do your job. And that's why we elect our officials. And then it's not that we're not interested. I'm sure that I'll be glad to bring you people if you want an audience. Okay? It's not that they're not interested, but you know what? They have a family, they have kids, they have grandkids, they got to make lunch, they have to make, that's why they're not here. That's why they're not here. So I am trusting you, I'm sending you my love, I'm sending you my support. Do what's right. Do not let Huckelberry threaten you or anybody else, okay? Because you represent us. And let's go to court. Yeah. Barbara said a couple times, let's see what a judge says. Let's see what a judge says. Let's see what a jury says. Let's see what the public has to say. And let's remind Huckelberry and everybody else that I've seen here today, you people are employed by us. Your check comes from us, the people, right? And as you commission people, I know you don't get paid. Is that correct? That's right. You don't get paid. But you do this because you believe in it. You know, you're passionate about it. I see it, and I love it. It's exciting for me to watch you guys